Welcome to the podcast, where we clear up common misconceptions in biology and evolution.
And learn that all the answers to evolution's mysteries are simple in the way that everything is astoundingly complicated.
Welcome to Darwin's Black Book.
Welcome back to another episode. My name is Tom Land, a zoologist and professional researcher.
And I'm Rebecca White. I'm a PhD student in evolution and genetics at the University of Exeter.
So, post-biographical episode. Normally we have quite a long one for whatever reason, and this time it's no different. We have another long one. Becca, what are we talking about today?
Okay, first of all, long in a good way, because
Absolutely.
This topic is fantastic. We're looking at de-extinction, and we found that while reading up on this and asking people about it, it fit very nicely into two sections: reviving the prehistoric, of course everybody thinks Jurassic Park, and then conservation and research. So what's actually been doing now, and why are people saying this is a good thing to do? So while we were first coming up with this, I asked a couple of people, if you were to bring back anything that's extinct, what would you bring back? And the first place I asked this was at a gaming stream by Sky Palace, and Sky Palace herself said she would bring back the dodo because they captured her heart in Doctor Who. I mean, it's as good a reason as any, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, if it inspires you to love dodos more, then go for it.
Someone else on the stream, White Life Fish, said the megalodon to justify their lack of swimming skills themselves.
Right, I have opinions about bringing back the megalodon, which I shall make very, very apparent later.
I also asked my mum, and she wanted to bring back the saber-toothed cats, the Smilodon. I don't know why. She loves cats. I think that's the reason.
It's a good choice, to be fair.
And then on a Facebook community, Harvey...
Kagakusha. It's Japanese for scientist.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, for real.
Oh, cool. Well, Harvey would choose the giant armadillo. And to be clear, the super giant armadillo, the car-sized one, the ordinary one, still hangs out in Argentina and Paraguay. Thanks for that clarification, Harvey. Also, from Charles Darwin University in Australia, Brenton von Takash would bring back the gastric brooding frogs because they're really cool. And apparently, the Lazarus Project have been working on actually doing this, but they haven't had much success so far. And my friend Jenny says also the dodo because these got mentioned a lot in primary school about something that went extinct, and she just wants to see what the fuss is about.
And to be honest, I'm a fan of that because it is just a giant pigeon.
Giant friendly bird.
A giant friendly pigeon, and I do love a pigeon. So, yeah, we're good with that. So, yes, Becca, when we're talking about de-extinction, I think the best place to start is, well, talking about extinction.
Yeah, so what actually is extinction? The definition is it's a species that has no living members, it's no longer in existence. That's what it comes down to. But there are other types of extinction, such as extinct in the wild, where we still have a few individuals or populations in captivity, but they no longer live in the environment that they first evolved into. You also have the idea of functional extinction. This is the extinction of a species that either disappears from the fossil record, or there aren't any historical reports of it or anything, or something that's more relevant. The reduced population no longer plays a significant role in ecosystem function, or that population is no longer viable. So there are individuals around, but they're not really going to go much further. They're probably going to be fully extinct soon. There isn't enough of them to actually be viable.
Yes, the population is literally too small. Genetic bottleneck, the too small number of individuals, even if they bred all of them, the gene pool is far too small to actually produce anything that would exist for very long.
Yeah, and some examples of this, northern white rhinoceros, ivory-billed woodpecker, Christmas island shrew, the Yangtze giant soft-shell turtle, South China tiger, Borneo rhinoceros, and so many more.
You could just go on and on and on, and it's really depressing, actually, looking at how long that list is.
Yeah, and most of the examples I mentioned most of them are mammals, but it definitely doesn't just apply to mammals. They're just the ones people seem to want to talk about.
Actually, a good example for this one would be the thylacine episode that we did rather recently. There were last two thylacine individuals, the last two of them, were both reported to have been female. And that is functionally extinct. They're still there, but they're both female. You can't do anything with that.
Yeah, that's a good example, actually. So what is de-extinction? So this is the process of generating an organism that either resembles or is an extinct species.
Jurassic Park! Woo!
Yes, that's one example of why that's not always a good idea.
Which I will be speaking about just a little bit later. So, yes.
We have to talk about Jurassic Park, really, don't we?
We do have to, absolutely.
There are several ways to carry out this process of de-extinction. So it's also called resurrection biology or species revivalism. So the most kind of, I'd say, direct method would be cloning when you've got the genome of the animal. It's the most kind of widely proposed method, although genome editing and selective breeding have also been considered. So this is using animals that are still extant, which is not extinct, to be able to try and resemble something that is extinct.
And I think over the course of the next episode, 2 episodes, we're going to really get into those methods. I certainly talk about them a lot. I know you, Becca, talk about them as well. And all the good bits, why they actually might be a good idea, and also why they won't be. So there is a really, really quite interesting, complex ethical issue in there.
Yes, especially as cloning is the only method that can actually give you an animal with the same genetic identity. But cloning itself has a lot of issues in terms of technology, but also ethically. And we'll definitely get onto that too.
It's going to be great. It's really a happy topic right there. So yeah, I'll be talking primarily about, So I'll be taking the first bit, kind of talking about the deep-seated desire to bring back prehistoric animals, to see what they look like, to prod them, to actually see them in the flesh, and the science that would go into that, the really detailed, intricate biology that's being done to see how feasible it is, which is really, really quite interesting. And then also, the benefits and negatives of doing that.
And then I'm going to be talking about some really modern extinctions, why they went extinct, and potential de-extinctions that might actually be happening like within the next decade.
So exciting.
And maybe the ethics of that and the kind of conservation benefits that can offer.
Perfect. Cool. Right. Let's talk about de-extinction.
Let's do it.
So as Becca was chatting about just a second ago, talking about de-extinction, first get your head around the extinction bit of it. And I think the biggest thing to understand is 99.9% of all species that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct.
That's a lot of animals and organisms that did exist that just aren't around anymore. A huge amount.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge amount, considering the diversity we've got today and looking back at literally eons worth of animals that have gone extinct. Just let that sink in. And to understand the timescale, I think that we're going to be talking about and the animals which have lived across history, there's a really snazzy way of trying to make that relative. And I found an excellent analogy in the book, The Missing Links, The Past and Future of Britain's Lost Mammals by Ross Barnett. And I have unashamedly stolen the introduction. But I think it's a really, really interesting way just to get your head around the timescales and the animals that we're dealing with. So, wherever you're listening to this, unless you're on a bus, because this is going to be really, really weird, stick your hands out either side of you in a kind of T-shaped position.
I'm doing it.
Becca, do it.
I'm sorry, I'm doing it.
Yeah, no one's watching. I'm not judging you. It's great. So, imagine the distance from your left fingertip to your right fingertip is the history of all complex life on Earth, starting with the first multicellular animal about 580 million years ago at your left fingertip.
Got it.
Cool. The first mass extinction that ever occurred on Earth takes place at your left elbow.
Got it.
That is 444 million years ago. 90% of all marine species died out.
Whoa. Okay, at my elbow.
At your left elbow. So, after that, life continued. The second mass extinction took place by your left shoulder 376 million years ago. That is at the end of the Devonian. 3/4 of all species on Earth disappeared entirely.
Okay.
But life continued. Third mass extinction occurs at your right shoulder 250 million years ago. I can see you doing a weird yoga thing.
I'm tapping where you're saying. Is anyone else's arms really hurting now?
Sorry. So, 250 million years ago, your right shoulder, that is called the Great Dying. Only 4 species for every 100 made it through this period.
Wow, what a shoulder.
Trilobites scraped through the second one, but they ended at your right shoulder here. That's the end of the trilobites. But life continued. The 4th mass extinction at your right elbow, 200 million years ago. This time only a meagre half of all species went, so it's kind of a small one. But
only half of everything.
Only half of everything, but guessing life went on. The 5th mass extinction, the most famous by far, 66 million years ago, is between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene on a Tuesday afternoon, and an asteroid came down. An asteroid the size of Manhattan landed in modern-day Mexico and wiped out the dinosaurs and the pterosaurs and the ichthyosaurs. Much global warming happened, and it was bad.
Where's this? At my wrist?
That's at your wrist.
My wrist, okay.
But life continued. The 6th extinction starts where the nail on your right middle fingertip began growing this morning. That's approximately a few micrometers, and those few micrometers represent 50,000 years, and in this, the mammoth, the moa, the dodo, the diprotodont, the panther, the passenger pigeon, and the toxodonts are all made extinct. From where your fingernail started growing this morning.
I'm going to need my microscope.
Also, how are you fitting all of those animals on that tiny little, terrible joke.
Genuinely.
But I just wanted to put into perspective the timescales that we're talking about and the fact that mass extinctions happen a lot. There's been quite a lot of them, and every single time life has come through. So I don't want extinction to be a kind of a shocking thing or a horror kind of...
It's just part of the process.
Just part of the process of life on Earth.
Can I put my arms down now, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
You may all put your arms down and... yes. And with that, de-extinction of prehistoric organisms. Things that have been eliminated by one mass extinction or another, even right up to the 6th one of humans. So, I'm going to talk about the woolly mammoth and Jurassic Park. I think these are the ones that you would think about without fail, talking about trying to bring something back from prehistory. And I really wanted to get into the science behind both, actually, and understand why people are obsessed with trying to bring back dinosaurs, and then I will explain why this is a terrible idea. But first of all, let's look into everyone's favourite Ice Age animal, the woolly mammoth. So this is the most recent of any of the animals I'll be talking about. Mammothus primigenius. It was extinct in the UK about 14,000 years ago, and it was extinct world over about 4,000 years ago, which is about 2000 BC. And putting this in perspective, the ancient Egyptians had been rocking around for nearly a millennium and a half at this point, and the Great Pyramids of Giza, the really big famous ones, were already 500 years old by the time the mammoths went extinct. Just putting that in perspective. But these things, they were behemoths. Their males were 3.5 metres at the shoulder and 6 tons. The females were 2.5 to 3 metres at the shoulder and 4 tons. A newborn weighed nearly 100 kilos.
That's like at least about double my weight.
That's large.
For a baby.
It's very large. And they have huge curled ivory tusks. They could live until they're about 60 or 70. They are in the same order as modern-day elephants are today. I won't go into how or why they went extinct in detail. It was us. But that's for another episode.
Wait, mammoths was humans?
And climate change.
Okay. I didn't know humans had something to do with that. I knew they hunted them, but I didn't realise it had that much of an impact.
Humans... Okay, I'm going to go into detail now. Humans hunted them to such a significant degree that they were pushed back to isolated pockets around... Europe, specifically in the north of Europe, and they physically couldn't maintain the ecosystem in which they lived in because they were ecosystem engineers. The entire environment changed and they couldn't breed effectively, and they also got much smaller. But I will go into those in just a minute. But yeah, that's unfortunately how these animals went extinct. So the majority of mammoths that you'll find today, which aren't in Cheddar Gorge, South Wales or Kent, 3 UK locations where they've been found. It will be the Siberian tundra, and it's also where you probably imagine a mammoth to be wandering around the snowy slopes of
Absolutely.
somewhere far
Not
away.